Hi, I'm Gerald from CEO of Inzen Studio. So today we have the first panel of the day, which is awesome. We have a very interesting panel lined up for you. It's a pretty diverse panel of different people from different backgrounds operating well in the Southeast Asia, from the Southeast Asian region. So first I'll introduce Thomas from Playlab. And then Robin from Asiasoft, and Keith from Altitude Games, and Frank from IB Media. So, yeah. Okay, so I'll give an overview of the panel and why this is interesting, right? It's pretty cool because you have companies at different stages of the life cycle, and sort of you can see the evolution of the different companies as we go through the panel. We have Thomas with Playlab, which has evolved from a developer into a full-fledged publisher with published products in the market. We have Robin from Asiasoft. Asiasoft is a PC MMO publisher, which is evolving into a mobile publisher. We have Keith from Altitude Games, which is evolving from a developer into a publisher. And Keith himself comes from a publishing background in the Philippines. And we have Frank, industry veteran of 20 years, from Europe, evolving into publishing and distribution in Southeast Asia. So I'll invite the guests the panelists to give an introduction of their company and what sort of their origins were, and perhaps what some of their strengths were when they started out, and what their base is. So, Thomas.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction. And first of all, thanks to Maxim and Jesse and Teddy for organizing such a great event. It seems like the attendance is at its max capacity. Everybody is no more seats left, which is good. So I'm glad you're all here. And I'm glad to be here. A little background about Playlab is we started about 3 years ago. Started in Bangkok, grew the company over the last 3 years to about 105 people. Last year we acquired a studio in the Philippines to get more regional reach in terms of our strategy on publishing more in the Southeast Asia region. So this year we're also looking at expanding more into Southeast Asia. We're looking very much here at Ho Chi Minh, as well as Malaysia and Indonesia as some of the very interesting markets for us to look at. Our background is we did a very successful title called Juice Cubes, which has more than 23 million downloads, top 100 grossing for 5 consecutive months across multiple of the platforms, both iOS and Android. And that's kind of what propelled us from going from basically an indie developer into the publishing genre. And then since then, we've also signed, as you mentioned, a local development firm in Thailand as a publishing deal, co-development/publishing deal, where we've helped them launch their game. They're actually launched last week. And if you go into the App Store on iOS, you'll see them as the top banner currently, Range Run. So that's a little bit about it.
First of all, thank you everyone for attending, and thanks to the GMGC organizers for organizing this event in Vietnam. I believe it's one of the first, and the turnout is very great, as what our friend has said. I'm Robin from Asiasoft. We are basically, I would say, one of the oldest game publishers in Southeast Asia. We have been publishing games for more than 10 years. Started out in Thailand, and we had offices all over Southeast Asia. So we have started from MMO, we move on to the other genres of PC, like esports, casual, and so on. And with the change of the new era into mobile gaming, we are also moving into the mobile games publishing. So for Southeast Asia, we actually had a base of more than 140 million registered users with us. And we have not really started into full steam in publishing mobile games. We just try out a few games in different countries. And up next for us will be also releasing more mobile games in the whole of Southeast Asia.
Hi, thanks for giving us a chance to participate in the panel. I'm Keith Morales. I'm from Altitude Games. Altitude started a couple of years ago with just 5 founders who were veterans in the mobile game development in the Philippines. Mr. Gabby Dizon is our CEO. And now we're at around 24 to 26 people in the company. One of the unique things that sets us apart as developers in the Philippines is our partnership with Surpass, which allows us to do tie-ups directly with the telcos, which gives us the opportunity to get a lot of subscribers for our games.
Hi, my name is Sliwka. I'm the CEO of International Business Media. First, I want to say thank you to David, Maxime, and Teddy for setting up such a great conference, and I hope everyone has 2 days packed with business meetings. International Business Media is located in Singapore, and we founded this company 3 years ago. I'm originally from Europe, and I moved to Singapore 3 years ago. IB Media is a consultancy and publishing house. We have our outlets in Germany, and we work mostly with European clients who wants to set up businesses in Asia, especially Southeast Asia, and we take them from really step 0 into operations. And also we are having a really big international network. We are advisors to GDC, to Gamescom, and other big events. And our clients, and after we set up these operations for our clients, we are coming more and more in the position to publish their games. So for us, it's the way from the consultancy company into a publishing.
Very cool. So for the benefit of the audience, we're trying to cover the full publishing chain today. So we're trying to go from the key markets that these guys are focused on, down to how they source for games, and then how they then test for and operate the games in the market. So hopefully we'll have enough time to go through that full chain, so you get to really understand what publishing and operating in Southeast Asia is about. And hopefully maybe partner with one of these guys, which is pretty cool. So maybe I'll start with Thomas first, because being one of the most evolved companies in this area, and you shared a little bit about the story of coming from an indie developer and how some of that success has driven you to operate within the Thai community, which is pretty cool. So perhaps you can give an overview of what key markets you're focused on, and sort of what player types have come up from the key markets that you're focused on.
Okay, sure. So some of the key, there's like 2 phases to that question. The first one is in terms of key markets where we're sourcing for content, that's in Southeast Asia. So Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, those are like the main countries where we try to find indie developers that have a strong team behind them, made a lot of the right decisions initially, have built a product that is in the market, doing relatively well, but with our experience we can see where that product can ultimately go. So that's kind of where we're sourcing for the majority of our products. One of those deals that we came across was with Infinity Level, based out of Bangkok. We signed with them about a year ago, actually, and as I mentioned, we just launched with them. And it's been a very interesting journey to go through them as kind of one of our example or case studies. So they actually moved into our office, used our office space, and we helped them out with anything from very basic game mechanics to integrating analytics into their games, making sure that their backend was scalable, building cross-platform, so it's not only launched on iOS, it's on Android, and an Amazon version is on its way. So really being able to get that reach from the initial get-go for the indie developer. So we're kind of in the prospect of in between where indie developers in general and where we come from, we're capable of taking a product and then bridging that gap to a global success. So we're looking for content in Southeast Asia and bringing that to global markets. In terms of focus of our users, we've been primarily focused very much on social casual gamers. 35 to 55-year-old housewives in the US, shops at Walmart, listens to Lil Wayne, that kind of character, our general audience, because that's where we've seen majority of the engagement for our casual titles. And that's also, as we talked about actually during breakfast this morning, it's very interesting to look at that for Southeast Asia, because especially Vietnam, it's a very mature market compared to, well, the rest of Southeast Asia. In terms of the gamers are much more focused on the MMORPGs, RPG games, China-inspired and Japanese-inspired games, where payment is crucial to integrate with payment providers to make to profit from these users, because the users are incentivized to actually go out and get those extra levels, or in the mid-core, hardcore space, whereas from our casual users, the incentive is much lower for them to go down to the local 7-Eleven or the local store to do a payment for 5 extra moves. So there's some differences in terms of genres that you're in how to actually publish it. I don't know if that completely answers the question, but
No, it does. I think the takeaways from there, that one of the things that I'd like to explore further later on is you seem to have a very deep integration with the developers. That's something that we'll cover later on in the cycle. The interesting thing that you mentioned, of course, is I think the market coverage of US and Europe, and how I know quite a few companies that would think maybe it may make sense to integrate payment solutions in Southeast Asia to monetize that. But from you from your company's perspective, it sort of doesn't make sense because it doesn't fit the audience behavior. And I think that's a very conscious decision you have to say no to integrating that, right? Which is interesting for yeah.
Well, yes and no. It's just there's a lot of other low-hanging fruits that you can go out and monetize prior to getting to such a granular level. Yeah. For example, in Southeast Asia for the really casual games, where it makes more sense to look for distribution or other things outside of the region. So.
Got it. Very cool. I understand. So Robin, what's your story like on perhaps if we're talking about key markets, the supply side and the demand side as well? Where are you sourcing for games, and what does the demand side look like for you?
Okay. First of all, for Asiasoft, our key focus has been always Southeast Asia, where we have established offices around in all the key 6 countries, from Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and also Vietnam. We have been in Vietnam for, I would say, about 7 years. Maybe in the early stage, you play some of our PC games. So even till now, for mobile games, our focus is still here because it's a very fast-growing market. Recently, for 2015, it has been very much mentioned in global media about the fast-rising growth of Southeast Asia, the number of users in Southeast Asia, and so on. So for Asiasoft, we don't do development, so we are actually a very pure publishing, marketing, channeling, and payment company for games. So we actually source our games or license games from developers from all over the world. Right now, mainly from Japan, Korea, China, and also from some developers in US and Europe. So for mobile game-wise, we are also looking at working with local companies, because there's a lot of good gaming startups coming up in different countries in Southeast Asia. Vietnam is very hot. Thailand is growing. Also, there's a pool of good startups coming up in Indonesia and Singapore. So, yeah. So for us, our strategy is basically sourcing and licensing from developers.
So I guess, are there any markets in Southeast Asia that you focus more on in terms of your strategy?
Okay. Thailand is our key market because we are one of the biggest over there. We had over 20 PC games been operating in Thailand, and in Thailand we had about 4 mobile games in operation. And one of them is basically our mobile, which we have been publishing for more than 18 months. and actually we are still making profit from that. So Thailand is our key market, and for us, but the rest of the markets are equally important because it's fast growing. Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, the number of smartphone conversion over the last year is actually amazing. So we are also putting more focus in these key areas.
Understand. What types of games, or do you focus on particular types of games? Casual, mid-core, hardcore?
Okay, from our background, our key pool of users are ranging from age of 15 to 30 plus, and we have been operating RPG games for quite a long time. So our immediate base are more the RPG gamers. But for mobile gaming, the age group is very wide, ranging from 15 to 60 years old. So we are exploring all angles, not limiting ourselves to RPG. So casual games, RPG games, even strategy, puzzle-based, anything that appeals and brings fun to the gamers, that's what we are looking at.
Very cool. Thank you. Maybe now is an appropriate time to move on to Keith. What key markets are you focused on, supply and demand side?
For altitude games, our main targets would be the English-speaking countries. So for players, we're looking at targeting the casual to around mid-core players. We're looking for games that are, playable alone, more than having games that are multiplayer heavy. So we're looking for games that are how do you say this? That are social, yeah.
Okay.
So it really would drive retention for us. It actually also dictates how we choose what games to develop internally for us.
Are there any key English-speaking markets that you would focus on first? Having being at the earlier stage of the life cycle.
So at the early stage of the life cycle of games, we usually go into Malaysia and Thailand first. So that's where we do our soft launch. That's where we do testing. That's how we prove that we actually have a game that would work. Are we getting enough players coming back? Are we engaging them enough for us to be able to actually think about converting them? Are marketing materials, being responded to well, so that when we roll it out globally, we'd have a better idea. Of course, there's a lot more research that goes in with each country that we will be targeting. So, but at least with our testing in Malaysia and Thailand, it allows us to at least ask the right questions when we do research for the markets.
Very cool. Thank you. So actually, there is a common factor between Asiasoft and Altitude Games. One of the things and I guess perhaps one of the summaries around this table as well is there's a very specific approach to each Southeast Asian country, right? As we've probably covered, and it's probably covered quite a bit, that it does require a different approach to different markets. Some are more English-speaking than others, and some require more localization or culturalization than others. Okay, very cool. So maybe Frank, we can discuss a little bit on the market.
Okay, so we are looking for casual and social games, mostly already published in homelands in Europe. And our key markets are the English-speaking or most English-speaking markets in Southeast Asia, and we focused on Malaysia at the moment. There are, for us, some good reason it's English than Malaysia. It's the consumers looking mostly for foreign content, so it's for our clients, it's good to step into Southeast Asia, so Malaysia. But really for us, it's we have companies, and I think this is a little bit different to all the others here in this round. We have companies, they are not active in Southeast Asia, so they step into the market, and that needs a lot of more attention from our side to guide these companies to do the right things. And as we are operating now in Southeast Asia for around 10 years, we have a big database where we can really do the right recommendation and recommend the right steps to do for our clients.
Understand. So when you publish in a market like Malaysia, is that more a partnering or do you
This we can do both self-publishing or working with partners. So currently, it's some days ago we have an agreement with an Australian-based publisher. That's a partner. They have a really big network here in Southeast Asia. It really depends on what our clients can deliver, and so it's really a case-to-case study.
Thank you. So I guess in this panel we've covered some of the key markets that these players have sourced for and are targeting. Now we'll move on to the testing and validation process of each game within the or perhaps a case study of that. Some of you have mentioned before. I know with Thomas, with Ranch Run, it seems like there's a 1 year cycle from when you took on the game to when you finally launched it. So perhaps you can share a bit about the testing and validation process of validating. How did that happen?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So the thing is, and I know this coming from the indie developer background, is when you develop a game, you've got it in the market and you start pushing it out, you think the product is ready. The market disagrees with you. That's why we come in. It's mostly because you intend to launch the game, but you don't, as an indie developer, you don't see that you need analytics. You don't see that you need localization. You don't see that you need additional QA testing to make sure it works on multiple devices on Android. You don't see necessarily the need for being on multiple platforms. There's a lot of things that in my perspective is required to make a game that is globally successful. And that's why the time frame from actually signing up with the developer to getting them as well, working very closely with them, getting them in the mindset of data and analytics and localization, and a lot of those prep things that is required in a game before it will have that success going out globally. And I think it's a general thing because there's so much content on the app stores these days. There's millions of apps, millions of games. Unless you have a product that really stands out in one way or another, whether that's with a local language localization or other things, it's hard to get that visibility in the stores. And those things are also things that helps you. So one of the things I'm very pro on is marketing and advertising, and actually doing user acquisition, and without having creatives that you've split tested a number of times to make sure that they work in the local market, you get better conversion rates, you get lower CPIs, you lower cost per install, per user that you drive to the game. All of those things have a huge impact when you're going out buying tens and millions of users across the globe. So if you can minimize that cost by being in a testing phase for a longer period, it's definitely worth it to do that. Not saying that you shouldn't. You should always get the game out as early as possible and get some consumer feedback. Yep. In a couple of test markets, and similar like Keith, we also test out in Malaysia and Thailand. Yep. As some of because we're based here and we're based in Thailand. That gives us a lot of insights because all of our games have been published there, and we have an idea of how do consumers respond to different things. So that's part of it. When we look for other games now in these days, we're very specific in what kind of, as I said, we're very data and metrics driven. So we expect to see, at least in terms of retention rates, of 40, 20, 10, in terms of day 1, day 7, and day 30 retention from the developers that we work with. And even if you have a game that's not at those metrics yet, but have the potential to get there, then we're still interested in going in. So we differentiate ourselves a little bit by not being the publisher that takes your games, puts it on the App Store, writes a nice description, and presses publish, and takes a huge rev share of that. We want to be much more involved, and as I mentioned with Ranch Run, they've been sitting at our office for 9 months. They finally, just here for the launch, moved out and got their own because they've in the meantime grown the team from about 5 guys to I think almost 15. And those things is important for us to be in direct communication with the games that we publish, because we don't want to publish for the top 5% of the market. We want to be in the top 0.1% of the games out there. So that's kind of our vision for the game developers and the indie developers that we work with. It's much more hands-on and much more let's work on this together, and you get all insights to what we've been doing in our games, so you have some benchmarks to look out on, because that's another challenge as an indie developer is you put your game out there, but you don't know if it's good or bad. You don't have any reference points necessarily in terms of session times or any other metrics. So that's where we can come in, and we give basically full insights into our other games' performance, so you can always benchmark yourself and see what features were implemented at what times, and how did that have an impact on the retention rate and the monetization across our games. So, yeah.
So I think the interesting thing that you do is you're heavily optimized, like your optimization decisions all the way from, I think at the start there was an optimization decision, whether to integrate that Southeast Asian payment solution. That was an optimization decision. And as you work with the developer, it's just sort of optimizing for optimal decisions along the way. What's the lowest CPI that you can get? All that sort of by testing different outcomes. Is that?
Yeah. So it's a basic principle called the Pareto principle, about the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Always focus on all your energy on the 20% that actually moves the needle 80% in the right direction. Yeah. So it's making decisions on, is this feature that I'm building, this integration that I'm doing, this payment integration, or whatever it is, does the outcome come out as a significant result compared to all the other things that is in my backlog? Because as a developer, you always have limited resources. There's unlimited markets you can go into. There's unlimited distributors you can talk to. There's unlimited ad networks, and it's all about finding that handful of things that really pushes the needle in the right direction in terms of whether you're optimizing towards retention or monetization or what you're doing with the game, or virality for that matter. So it is always making those decisions and prioritizations on what takes the game to the next level, because you can always build things, and that's why we use data a lot, is if users don't even get to level, let's say 100 in your game, there's no point in continuing to build the boss levels or anything else. You need to take a step back and kind of get a bird's eye overview of the game and focus on the initial things where users churn in the game, and try and deconstruct as to why that's happening, get an understanding for the consumers, and then try and get that feedback loop going with the consumers on what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and continue to develop that based on the market, and not as much on what your own preferences are towards what a game should be like, but more what the market wants as for a game. So.
Very cool. Thank you. Robin, what's your experience been like in I guess the test phase? How do you do market tests and that pre-launch cycle?
Okay. Actually, Thomas has covered quite a fair bit on the metrics that every one of us is looking at. I think for publishers, we are very concerned about all the data that we can derive from your game, because that helps us to analyze whether the game is workable, suitable for each local market. So for us, Southeast Asia is 6 countries with 6 different culture, language, behavior. So again, finding a game that works across the whole of Southeast Asia is a very big challenge for us. Even till date, we've been testing a lot of games. I think for this year, I'm testing about coming to 400 games from developers all over the world. So sad to say, my hit rate is less than 1%, because it's something that is very hard to find. So we had a lot of metrics on the data, on the retention, on your monetization. Okay, monetization, we can adjust that, but it's how the gameplay retains the users and all this, we are concerned. Because user acquisition cost in Southeast Asia is getting very high right now, and retention rate is actually very low. A lot of users actually come and go. So that's one key concern for us. So how are we going to maximize or achieve a return on the investment we put in for UA? So when we select a game or review a game, we look into different mechanics that would suit the local country or the region. So once we actually license or acquire a game, we actually work with the developer. We don't do the development. So we had basically project teams in different countries to work with the developer to localize certain parts of the games that appeals to the local culture. One example, Thailand. Their Thailand New Year is in April, which is different from the rest of the world. So that's a very big event where a lot of users are spending a lot during that week. So we try to work with our partners to come up with something special, an event for maybe just Thailand or an event that the whole Southeast Asia can celebrate. So this is part of the localization of games. So developers who work with us, we work closely in making sure that games is culturally acceptable and enjoyed by the gamers. So that's one part for us, for us as a difference between the rest. So I would say that's because we are a publisher with no development resource, but more of managing the game and creating all this, managing the game and the product itself.
Understand. So a lot of the sort of final packaging, the marketing, that sort
Yeah.
of, yeah.
So for us, we take care of the packaging, the marketing, third-party payment is important because except for Singapore, most of the countries still have very low credit card penetration rate. If you are saying that Vietnam is low, it's equally the same in Indonesia and Philippines. So third-party payment is important for us. At least we need to make some revenue for both parties. And besides that, marketing. Marketing is right now a very key because of Southeast Asia. There's no barriers for publishing in the app stores. So we are actually facing competition from within the region and also out of the region. So I think that's also a key issue for us on the marketing cost and the acquisition side.
What's your test cycle like? How long do you sort of do the optimization before a game is ready for launch?
Okay, from a developer or partner sending us the game to us to test, actually that takes a while because of the queue of games we have. We had local teams in each country testing the games to ensure that the game appeals or is suitable for the local market. So each team will basically test the game, then we compile and we determine whether the game is suitable or not. So that process takes maybe about 1 to 2 months because of the number of games we have. After we acquire, we aim to launch a game within less than 6 months or going OBT in the 6 months time frame because we do not want to miss the window for the game itself. So once we get started, we start to kickstart all the setup integration with our partners with our APIs, our ID system, our payment system, our metric system, setting up server testing. So 6 months is a target time frame, but if we can keep it short, that would be best. Because for us is we want to obtain obtain a game that's ready to go to the market. We don't really want to incubate that long because of the interest in the market when we're just afraid that we'll miss the train. And when we release the game, it's too late.
I understand. Very cool. Thank you. Perhaps Keith, you can share a little bit about the pre-launch.
Like you guys said, you basically covered most of that, but I'll try and expand on what they've said before. So right now, what we're doing is the first stage is really trying to see if the game is worth putting money in. Like when we do testing in Malaysia, in Thailand, you have to make sure that for every player you get at least 3 to 4 players out of it organically. Because if you don't get at least that, it's going to be really expensive for you to continue doing user acquisition for that game. And so with that being said, looking at testing out your core loop first and then seeing if that's working, you're getting people reacting to your game well, and then adding or new features to that. Because like what they said earlier, it doesn't really make sense to keep on developing on a game if the first part of your game isn't really entertaining your users yet. And following that, it doesn't really make sense to dump a lot of marketing resource on a game if it doesn't really prove itself that you'll be able to get your money back. So that's basically one of the key things when it comes to launching and releasing a game. So for us, that's basically it.
Thank you. And I realized, Thomas, did you want to say, because you...
It was just a short follow-up because it's a very important metric before you can make any decisions during the testing process. So what we actually do with a bunch of indie developers is if the game isn't live yet and we don't have any feedback on it, we actually sign basically an option for us to do a co-development agreement with them on the terms that we will spend like $5,000 or whatever is required to get an initial influx of users into the game, so we can evaluate the metrics based on that. So we are actually willing to go on and say this is a risk-free process in a sense for the indie developer to test out, does the game work in a couple of test markets at least, because we need to see the metrics, we need to see how it performs in the market, because I can have my personal opinion about it and everybody else here will have different personal opinions about it, but we need to see how does the game as it is right now currently work in the market, and what's the response back from the consumers that are eventually going to play the game and at some point hopefully pay for it. So that's one of the things we do with the developers where the game isn't live yet.
Actually, there was one interesting statistic that I was just wondering if it's possible to share this before we get on to Frank. This is a question for Robin as well. For Thomas, you mentioned the 40-20-10. At what point do you start planning for launch? At what point in the retention, like what metrics in terms of retention do you decide that it's ready?
Yeah. So we don't make launch decisions necessarily based on retention only. We also ultimately look at lifetime value of a user and the current CPIs that are there. And then we also, as Keith mentioned, the organic uplift that you always have a factor in, and that varies based on the market, how long you've been in the market, what's your saturation in terms of users in that specific market, and a lot of factors factor into that. But basically, we have some calculations that makes that clear for us. And when we get to a point where acquiring users makes sense on a bigger scale, because we also know that at small scale you can continue to do user acquisition and you can always get users for less than $1 in the US, but if you want it at scale, it's going to cost multiples of dollars. I think the average cost is about $4.50 in the US now. So user acquisitions costs are going up. It's saturated a little bit in the US, but in Southeast Asia, the margins to grow are still way higher. So it is a concern, as was mentioned earlier, that's an increasing cost. But yeah, those in order to make those decisions, it's basically whenever lifetime value of a user is higher than the CPI, then we start looking at, okay, how can we scale this up further?
Does Robin have a comment on?
What Thomas has said, for publishers, we have our own metrics, and our concern is cost versus revenue. So we will actually do small scale marketing to obtain metrics and information to see how the game will be able to scale or to be able to retain or to monetize. So once we hit certain benchmark, which every company is different, then we move on to a next phase, which is basically a larger scale marketing, or we may just tweak the marketing plan to target a certain group or certain form of advertising promotion method. So for Asiasoft, we do digital and offline marketing. So we had various options to look at to see how we can push the game. But again, the game need to have the core features, the core functions inside. So not necessary for publishers that once we sign a game, we will just push it out 100% without seeing anything. We still have our own metrics, cost versus revenue, to work on.
Thank you. Frank, what's your experience been like?
This is our biggest challenge, is the expectation of our clients. Most of these companies, they are successful in their home region, and they think, oh, we can do this in the same way here in Asia, in Southeast Asia. They say no. That not mean that you have success here. You have to think in another way. Marketing, it's completely different, and we do some offline marketing as well. I think it's worth to do it for our clients, but we really come every time in the position to teach our clients how to step into the market and how to handle it. It not means they have their analytics, they have their database, everything, but this is a new challenge, and they come maybe from a higher level, but now it's another game, and this is for us where we have really invested a lot of times to explain how it works, how they have to step in. Testing, it's a very important step. That means we can look into it if the chances that the game will be successful in Europe, not means it's successful in Southeast Asia. So that's our experience here.
So we have, I guess, perhaps about 5 minutes left in terms of content before we open up for questions and answers. Perhaps we can cover the last bit. I was going to, perhaps this is a choice that you can make. You want to talk a bit more about user acquisition and marketing, or you can talk a little bit about the game life cycles and what you do in the update cycles. So I leave this open to you, to whichever angle you want to cover. Maybe you start with Thomas.
I'll start again. We can take both of it basically, because they're very somewhat closely aligned. In our perspective, and is that when you actually launch the game, that's when you should double down in terms of your development efforts and content release cycles as well, because that's one of the strengths or things that I've observed in Southeast Asia that is quite common here for successful titles, is having a really dedicated live operations team that supports the game as you go live, making sure you get continue to tweak, you continue to iterate on the monetization, you continue to measure all the metrics and see how it continues to perform in the game. Because what works now when you look at the whole life cycle of a game doesn't necessarily work in a year's time. And that's why it's important to continue to do that. Some of the experiences we launched in with our former title, we launched in Australia, everything was good, users loved it, then we launched in the US, and we expected the same result, and we got a completely different result, even though they're both English-speaking markets, just based on the consumer behavior. So that's why it's really important to continue to monitor your game after it goes live, and even more so than during the development, because you have users there, you need content, you need new competitions, tournaments, everything that you can do to continue to re-engage the users for a longer period of time, that will come back tenfold in terms of your retention rates, in terms of virality, in terms of basically everything else. And ultimately, like at the end of that, it comes to the value of the users that you then spend and you acquire through user acquisition is going to be much higher, because you're capable of extending the lifetime of the game for a specific user, and that's kind of the key points in is how do you continue to re-engage the users? Do they drop off here? Paying users, we segmentize them as well in different groups, and then we try to re-engage them after a number of days where they, for example, have been inactive, because we've paid so much to acquire the user to come play our game. Why let them go? Why not try and bring them back as much as we can? So those are some of the things that we do, as well as we also try to focus, once the game is live, to focus on the second and the third purchase within the game, and re-engaging for that, because once the users have done their second purchase, we see that they stick with the game much longer. So yeah, that's part of that, and then that always has to be tweaked on from the user acquisition and marketing side, because there's different CPI costs across all of the region, across all of the world basically, and retentions are different for every single market. They're in the same range normally for the same game, but there's always variances. Some of the experiences we did, we launched some what we thought was a funny and cute feature of basically a pig exploding, and we launched that in Malaysia, and we were wondering why is that not working out, and then we realized there's a huge Muslim population so we made some of those ground errors to begin with, and learn from that. So that's why it's just continue looking at the data, looking at the funnel, and doing that individually on a very granular level on every single market, every single platform, and then at the same time kind of combine where you see the results from your user acquisition sources. So where are you buying the users from? Which of the 25 ad networks that you're running with are the valuable users coming from? And then try and adjust that and continuously on every single market that you go into. That's where at least we add the most value to our own games as well as other developers.
Just a quick question. What's the time period that you provide for optimization at the post-launch, and then what expected life cycle, revenue cycle do you expect for the game?
So the live operation continues forever,
Yeah.
like until the game doesn't goes be like yeah.
Do you have any expectations in terms of a year, 2 years, or 3 months, 6 months?
It very much depends on the game. Some games have a shorter lifespan than others. Others have the peak early on. It depends whether it's the social casual genres games or you go into the more mid-core. It basically extends the more hardcore the games get. So all the way out at the casino end, you'll have life cycles that are 2 year plus for a single user. That means the life cycle of a casino or slots game can be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or even longer, because there's not a lot of the metrics that change over that period of time. Whereas for Flappy Birds, you see a huge spike in a couple of for a while, and then it drops off very quickly. So it very much depends on where in the spectrum, from super casual games to mid-core games to hardcore games to ultimately casino games, where in that spectrum your game lies, and that all extends the life, but it also minimizes the target addressable market size that you can actually target. So the more hardcore you get, the smaller the market size, the more casual, the bigger the market size. So it's that's kind of the balancing act.
Thank you. Robin, what's your perspective on?
For us, life cycle of the game is very crucial, because for publishers like us, we don't do code. It's not we don't do co-development or co-production, but for us, we treat it as a investment. So we need to make sure that we get good returns on the investment for ourselves and also for our partners. So usually for games, hopefully we can look at at least a 1 year cycle. So for the 1 year cycle, we expect our partners to be able to plan forward with their content roadmap and ability to adjust according to the market demands and to the culture of the playing behavior of the users. So as what Thomas has mentioned, each of us use a lot of metrics data to analyze a lot of things, and we would want our partner to adjust accordingly and not to be too rigid. Some games found success in certain countries, but doesn't mean it will be successful elsewhere. We had launched games that are successful in Korea, Japan, but when it comes to Southeast Asia, total failure. So we had encountered that before. We had our own expensive lesson, and we actually learned from there to see how we deal with each game and hopefully how each partner sees the market itself. And the life cycle also go hand in hand with the marketing, because once we are able to get everything sorted out, we'll plan for the marketing phase on our end to push up the game on the app stores or to the user base.
Perhaps this question a little bit for Robin. You mentioned Thailand is a key market, and then you move on to the rest. So do you go Thailand first and then the rest, or do you?
Not necessarily, because some games we actually don't. Not all games we need to publish in Thailand. For certain games, Thailand may not be a suitable market, so we just release it. Let's say across English-speaking, Sing Malaysia, Philippines, and including Indonesia, excluding Thailand and Vietnam, due to localization need of text and appeal from users, because certain game type or certain graphics or visuals don't work with just certain countries.
Thank you. Keith? Yeah.
Yeah, so expanding on what's been said also, you know, looking at the data is really important to figure out if it's ready to move forward, and you know what you can expect with the game. You know, not just looking at it, you know, understanding how each metric in the game affects everything else. You know, so it's really important to actually dive into that. And in terms of expectant life cycle of each game, of course, when we do planning, we're looking at around at least get good numbers for 2 to 3 years. And of course, that's not dictated by you, that's dictated by the market, you know. But there are some of the things that we're planning on doing so that we can push a game as long as we can, would be to, you know, to keep continuous engagement with players, release content, you know, and in guiding you on what content to release, it's going back to data. You have to look at the data. How are players, you know, reacting to your game? What's their pain points? Where do they drop off? Is there anything that they're looking for in your game, and that's related to keeping users engaged with you, opening communications with your users, so that you know exactly what's missing from your game, and you know, so it's all connected. It's all part of the big show. So it's it.
Frank, do you?
For us, it's the life circle of a game based really on a case-to-case fall, and depends on really a lot of factors. And I wanted to add what Robin said about marketing. It's influential for a life circle. For us, it's payment. The right payment solution is for us very important, that we can maintain the game longer in the market.
So perhaps what we can do now is open up to questions from the floor. Yeah.
So you have mentioned a lot about countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. But what about emerging markets like Myanmar? What would be your market strategies for Laos, Cambodia as well? If you don't have time, then I would be very interested to know about Myanmar.
Okay, so the question was, the panelists have mentioned the larger Southeast Asian markets like Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia. So the question was, what about other markets like Myanmar, Laos, and with a focus on Myanmar? Yeah.
I'll pick that. As I mentioned earlier, it's very much about focus, because you always, as a company or as a developer or anything, you have a limited amount of resources to do things individually. And when the market is too small in terms of revenue or generating revenue for you, and have other markets that are generating more, that's where your focus should be. And I think just from my experience, neither of the markets that you mentioned, whether Myanmar, Laos, or Cambodia, we've never really cracked the code to monetize in those markets. I think there's growth in those countries. I think it's still premature for us at least to go into those markets dedicated and do an effort where we look at we need to see some kind of traction upside investment wise from if we go in and invest a lot of money in building up a team and setting up localization team there and culturalization, the upside has to be there for us, and not necessarily in the first year or the second year, but it has to come at some point, and I think it will in those countries. I just think still right now there's other markets that have a faster trajectory and where the investment and then kind of the ROI on that investment is faster for us. So.
Okay, for Asiasoft, we actually did our research on the other markets, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia. So there are a few factors that also Thomas has mentioned. I think that actually stopped us to moving further into this market. I would say the maturity of the market and the infrastructure that's in the market. For companies like us, when we move into all these countries, it's not like a touch and go. We hope to achieve long-term success. So if the market is not ready in terms of infrastructure, payment, government legal issues, usually we will not try to step in. Myanmar looks attractive with about 60 million population, but data infrastructure is not really that fantastic. Smartphone penetration rate is still low. Most of them don't have credit cards. Payment is a big issue. Sorry, we don't really do free games. We still need some revenue to be generated for us and our partners. So considering all these factors, we may just we may just click on the App Store and release, but not the focus for us, because the investment we need to put in could be much better be used in other countries.
Very cool. So Max is going to kill us for this, but we have one more question. So yes.
So my question is, in the next 3 to 5 years, with the trends of the mobile game trend, and you are also moving to the mobile game publishing, and what do you see the trends for the next 3 to 5 years? Whether the developer itself they can publish in the game themselves, and they can distribute it through iOS and Android, and even Windows Mobile, because most of the user base for the mobile are centralized on this device and OS. So what will be the role of the publisher, the mobile game publisher, in the next in the future, maybe 3 to 5 years later? What do you see about the change, so that you can do an investment like forecast? What will be the next trend?
Okay, for your question, internally in Asiasoft, we actually thought about that. What's our position in the next few years, or what's the publisher position? Because of the lack of barriers, in the next few years, we'll see developers connecting direct to the App Store to the consumers. So for middleman role like us, I'm afraid that we may not be existing in the next few years if we still maintain what we are doing. So in the future, mobile, I would say the whole ecosystem, the value chain will be shorter. Is a direct B2B2C. So publishers like us may not be important, but there's a role for us to play in terms of support value-add services. First, payment. Besides app stores, basically right now, credit card or even telco payments, but all the basically card payments are still effective for certain age group. Marketing, localized marketing. For developers, you can go direct on digital marketing. You can go on Facebook, Google, or ad networks. But ground marketing-wise, you still need to engage certain agency or with partners to roll out, because offline marketing still has some effectiveness in certain countries. Marketing role, payment role, support role. So support services in each country is also a big concern. So publishers will evolve further, not just taking a game and release, but providing more value-add rounded services for partners. So that's where Asiasoft could be moving into the next 3 to 5 years, because in a way we open up our platform, our services, our user base to share with our partners. There's no point for us to hog the user base because it's a shared base. Previously, PC gaming companies has this mindset that oh, we try to keep our user base. We don't want other companies to come in and share because they are playing our games. We don't want them to flow out, etc., etc. But mobile gaming has changed the whole scenario totally. There's no way that I can keep a user forever or try to hide it away from rest because they can go to the App Store and find games. Previously, everyone has their own portals. So my users come to my portal, I try to keep them here. I don't want them to go to someone else. So from a closed environment moving to an open ecosystem, publishers like us need to evolve also. We can't remain as like a dinosaur or will be extinct. So next few years, you'll see more changes from Asiasoft. We will be rolling out actually more open-based services for partners to work with us.
A quick follow-up on that. I actually I agree that the old style of publisher model is dead. I also believe that it's difficult for, if not impossible, for indie developers to have success in today's market. If you look at the top grossing charts and the top successful companies out there, it's been dominated by a number of significant publishers in the market, and I think that trend will continue until if Apple or Google goes together and actually changes their mechanics or anything on it, which I think will be hardly unlikely. They want quality content for their platforms. They don't want average, and that's kind of what we've based a lot of our business model on, is helping the indie developers get to that successful in terms of quality products and production value of the products that they do. As well as an indie developer, you just don't have a bankroll of a couple of $1 million to spend on marketing. That sets you back, and just by that fact alone, you're way behind the pack of all the other guys in the market that's hungering for that visibility in the stores. So there is room for publishers, but I think it's, as you mentioned, going to be very much through the style that we've been doing, which is going to be hands-on, helping the product, because you can't just publish millions of products you can, but it won't be as successful as just getting one really good product into the market. It's much more valuable than flooding the market with average content. So that was just my 2 cents on it.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for a great panel. I think we had this variety of perspectives, and yeah, thank you so much. Good morning. First panel of the day done.
Hello. Thank you, Gerald. I know you must have more to say, but join us in next Mobile Game Asia. We'll give you another panel, right? Thank you.